Hi everyone, Samantha Varner from ProSymmetry here. Thank you so much for joining us today or for watching the recording of this webinar. Today we will be looking at a day in the life of a resource manager and the different things that they would happen to do in Tempus. So we're going to give it just about another second here. I want to make sure I'm sharing my screen, and it looks like I am. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So just some context here. A few weeks ago, we did a presentation, a webinar on a day in the life of a project manager. So we have many organizations that really dedicate out these two roles. The project managers are really looking at the demand needs of the project. How much time is it going to take? What are the tasks? What are the deliverables? And maybe they will be making requests to a resource manager, a line manager, something along those lines, someone on those lines, who can provide the named resource and the exact details for that project. So knowing that, I want to make sure I'm kind of laying the groundwork for what exactly we're going to be covering today. So for the resource manager side of things, we are going to be looking at, resource capacity. We are going to be looking at the different screens in which resource allocation can happen, knowing that sometimes resource managers are going into projects themselves and assigning the hours to their team. We are going to look at resource requests as well. Not go into much detail on that. We do have a video that goes into great detail on resource request. And then we're going to be looking at some different reports that can be generated within the system that we typically see help resource managers, executive teams determine, do they have enough people to do the work that's needed. We are going to be looking at a model to see how the allocation grid and a few of the other data points can help a resource manager better understand not only what their team is working on, but how much time, how much effort are they giving to the organization overall. So in order for us to get started, I really want to start with the basics of Tempus, which is capacity. In order to properly staff your projects, you need to know how much capacity do you have to give. And that can be found, that is defined within the resource's individual profile. So you'll see here, my screen is configured to go directly to the capacity screen. And as Tempus does out of the box, it defines capacity as one FTE, one full-time employee, is 8 hours per day. Now this can be custom defined, so something to be mindful of there. So we are looking at 8 hours per day during a 5-day work week. And when we round that up to the month level, when we roll that up, you will see here some months have 184, while others have 168. A few other things I want to mention in here. We do have the resources start and end date. So it looks like Lucas here started with the organization on January 1st, 2020. His capacity runs through 2025. I always recommend putting the end date as the time that the resource left the organization. And then additionally, if Lucas were to stay past 2025, we would just extend that out. So that's a key thing to identify here. Additionally, we often hear, is Tempus taking holidays into account or non-working time? And out of the box, no, Tempus is not taking those things into account. However, here, Tempus admins can define calendars. So if it's holiday calendars, maybe there's specific time that each team gets off for, something like that. And those calendars can be applied to the resource. So you'll see here, I'm hoping I have some things defined. So in May, we're accounting for an 8-hour holiday, and then July, we're accounting for the 8-hour holiday, which is changing the net capacity, which means this resource is actually only available 160 hours. Additionally, there's admin time that can be added to a project. The category is defined administratively, but then the resource manager or maybe even the resource themselves would come in here and fill this out. PTO is just one option. However, many people use this as a project. Just want to kind of mention it. And then additionally, in this capacity screen, so once we define how much the resource has available to give, one thing I want to note as we move through the allocation screens is this cross-project allocation grid down here. And in the future, in case you're wondering, this grid will expand better. So you can expect that in our next release. But down here, you're going to be able to see, okay, where is Lucas allocated to, and what is that doing for his net availability? So it looks like he is very much over allocated all of 2021, and then starts to free up later in the future. So a great item here if you don't want to use flat grid to look at the individual resource and make determinations from there. So as a resource manager, you have your capacity defined, you know what your team has available to do the work. So now, how do we make sure that they are assigned to the projects that they need to be working on? So let's go ahead and go back to our home screen. We're going to save Lucas because we did apply that calendar here. And let's go ahead and go into project management. So today I'm going to be focusing on two different allocation screens. I'm going to be focusing on single project allocation and bulk project allocation flat grid. Flat grid is our most popular allocation screen within Tempus, so I want to make sure that we cover that one as well. But so this is more of the approach of the resource manager knows specifically which project the resource needs to work on. Maybe there's some communication in the background. Maybe the resource manager is also the project manager. So it really just depends on how your organization manages this process. But let's say Lucas needs to work on this Zulu phase 10 here. And again, my system is configured to automatically go to this allocation screen. And here we can just take a look and see, okay, here are all of the resources who are already assigned to this project. And now we need to add Lucas. So here we would check this project out. We would go ahead and start typing in Lucas's name. And from here, Lucas has now been added to the project. He has not been added to an individual task, so he will be at that generic task level or that project level. And here we will be able to say, okay, you know, starting this month, I know they need 10 hours of Lucas for the next 3 months. And as a resource manager, I would be able to go in here, make this determination. With the heat map applied, I can see, all right, is Lucas even available to take on this work? As you can see here, everything is red, so it doesn't really look like it. But you know, going with that exercise, that is how we know we can apply these allocations to Lucas. So we would just save and check this in. And now Lucas is assigned to the project for those 10 hours for this month, December, and then January. So very, very easy to do here. Additionally, in the bulk project allocation flat grid screen, we're going to navigate there real quick. And go to the default tab here. A few things to note, we have a very specific webinar recording on bulk project allocation flat grid, so please check that out if you're looking for any more detail on this screen specifically. But one thing I want to make note here is this default mode is how you create those new assignments. So let's go ahead and search for Lucas. And we can either put Lucas on a new project. So let's see. So yep, we could either say, all right, I want Lucas on this Aurora phase 15. Let's go ahead and show our different tasks in here. So we have that good to go. We can pull in some different attributes as well. We could say assignment status, why not? And then from here, very, very similar to the single project allocation grid, we are just going in and typing how many hours are needed of Lucas. So this is a key screen because you're able to look at Lucas, look at the project, look at the specific tasks and say, all right, this is a brand new assignment. I want to assign Lucas to it. And we can go ahead and click save. Additionally, however, if we are Lucas's resource manager and we want to get a better idea of the projects that Lucas specifically is assigned to, when we go to this resource mode here and we have Lucas selected, all of the assignments that Lucas has are going to populate down here. So we see Lucas is on this project, on these tasks for those projects, and here are the hours that he is assigned. So say we want to, get a quick heat map overlay, which just tells us, which just tells us here that Lucas is over allocated. That's just where he's at. So maybe we can go in here, change up some hours. We can look at the totals. We can pull in those different attributes to see what's going on. And maybe we can make some determinations on, okay, does Lucas need to be on these projects and where does he stand right now? Like the single project allocation screen, you can view this information in cost. You can view this information in FTE. Also FTE percentage, you are able to input, values in here as well. So say when I put this down to 25%, that'll change and update, and we can save that, view this information at the week, month, or quarter level. So as a resource manager, depending on your organization's needs and how you operate with data, you have a lot of options for looking at your resources to know, okay, where do they stand? With this example, I focused on one specific resource here, but what happens when I am a resource manager and I have a team? So depending on the different resource attributes you have set up, you could filter by maybe say department, and maybe we want to filter to a specific one. So let's go ahead and look at the production department here. All of the production resources are going to display down at the bottom with all of their projects automatically selected. And then we could look down here again in this FTE percentage, maybe an FTE, maybe in our time, just to get a better look at, okay, what's going on with the team overall. And one thing that's really, really interesting in here too is you can actually filter down into individual projects, individual tasks, this assignment status right here, maybe you want to filter by that. You have a lot of options within this screen, and it is fantastic as a resource manager when you need to look at a lot of resources at once. The bulk project allocation flat grid screen is really key for being able to see what's going on with your team and how is this impacting a lot of the work that needs to get done. So highly recommend the flat grid for any resource managers. And again, this is all going to be editable. So say Cameron needs to come down in October for any reason to 50 hours. As simple as clicking in there, typing, hitting enter, clicking out, and hitting save. So as a resource manager, you have a lot of control of what's happening with your team within this screen. So some organizations, quite a few actually, that have a more structured resource management approach allows for resource requests. So what does this mean? The resource request is submitted by another user who maybe it's a project manager, maybe it is another line manager, something like that. They request a specific number of hours, maybe it's on a named resource, maybe it's on that demand planning or role-based resource. They request those hours, and if configured properly, that request will be sent to the resource manager. So you'll see here, Samantha, I am the resource manager for several of these resources. If someone were to request one of them, as it is configured, these requests will display here. I have an outstanding request, so I'm going to go ahead and click on this. And I see that the software engineer, it's a demand planning resource, has been requested for 355 hours on this project. So I double click, go in, and I could say, great, I know that the team has a need for this on this project. Here are all of the team members that I oversee, and let's see who can do this work. So you can see here, especially with these negatives, that much of my team is just unavailable. Rachel has a lot of availability, so let's go ahead and select her. She is now up here, and I want to go ahead and I'm going to allocate all of these hours over to Rachel. Oh, apologies. I want to zero all of this out, the requested hours up here. and now I'm ready to apply these changes. So very, very simple to do with the resource request screen. This also provides a level of governance, as you'll see as soon as I apply the changes to this. I notice a lot of our customers, a lot of our users, they are having these conversations, resource request conversations, in their inbox. And in their team meetings, and not all the time decisions aren't necessarily tracked. With resource requests, as a resource manager, this gives you more data behind the request. It gives your team more governance, more process, and I know that can be a scary thing sometimes, but it does give a more structured approach to the combination of project management as a role and resource management as a role. So within here, I do want to mention, again, these are all of the resources that I have. You know, maybe I want to pull in some specific items, maybe I want to pull in some specific skills just to see what the request needs. Maybe I only want to display the available resources, so that way I don't even consider over allocating someone else. You really have a lot of options in here that is key to a resource manager. All right, with that said though, I now want to fully replace the software engineer with Rachel. You can select multiple resources to eat up this time. You can leave some of the hours partial still on this demand planning resource, so you have options there, but for the sake of time, we're just gonna do a complete replace. I want to approve and I want to apply my changes. So now you'll see here, let me give a quick refresh. You'll see in here that this software engineer has been fully replaced, and this request has been taken care of. So you'll notice quite a few things in here, mostly that a lot of these are informational. That is due to some settings I had changed in my system. But down here, you can see, you know, as a resource manager, here's everything I've approved, rejected, partially approved. Here's something that came in as informational, you know, if this project was cloned. So this gives you a lot of information and a lot of background on the requests that are being made of your team. This can be exported to Excel. You can determine what columns are pulled in here. You can group items. You can even create your own specific view. Just as you can in project management and resource management. So this has some filters on it here. So a lot of options for the resource manager to be efficient, to see the data that they need to make their decision and move on. All right, so we have our resources defined, we have them allocated to projects, but how do I know what's going on and what they're working on, if my team is over allocated, under allocated, what's coming down the pipeline? So within report management here, we do have a webinar, a recording available in the Help Center that covers how to build these reports. So please refer to that for specific details, or feel free to email me after today's webinar. But in here, we can look at quite a few different styles of reports just to get a better idea of what's going on with our team. So maybe I want to look at a month-over-month allocation versus capacity bar chart with my line. So this bar here is our planned allocation, as you can see when you hover over it, and the line here is our capacity. I know in the real world, capacity is going to ebb and flow as contractors are hired or team members leave, are hired on, things like that. But this is a fantastic way to see, okay, October, November, and December, even, you know, ending these summer months here, we're over allocated. What do we need to do? What needs to be pushed, if anything can be? So again, gives you a great overview of your team's availability. Next, we have this over allocation report. And one of the reasons why I really wanted to show this is strictly because this availability percentage is a custom field that was created, a custom measure within a pivot grid. And I just wanted to show how customized and what is available within Tempus, because as a resource manager, if I can quickly see, okay, what's the availability percentage that I have for my team? So Abigail is extremely over allocated and very much unavailable for the entire year here. You know, Angela has some, Ashley has some. So this is a great way to be able to see this information at a quick level with that custom measure there. And then finally, if you are a team that is capturing actuals, whether that be through Tempus timesheets, maybe you're importing it from another system or a manual entry, you can in fact look at or create another bar chart or something similar. Maybe you want to create a pie chart, something like that, to compare your plan versus actuals. I know many of our resource managers want to be able to see, okay, this was the planned hours, this is how much we assumed, however, this is how much is actually happening, to help further define plans in the future. So you can get a very visual representation. You could pull this information into a pivot grid report as well, that more Excel-like with the physical numbers. So a lot of good information in here. It just depends on, you know, the way that you want to view the information, what type of report to create. And the last thing I wanted to show here is this allocation versus capacity report, and apologies. So this report here is showing us the individual resources, their base capacity. So again, this is their capacity before any calendars or admin time is applied, and then their planned allocation. So I know a lot of executive teams do not want to see all of the numbers. Even a lot of individuals, they rather see the visual representation, which is where that bar chart with the capacity line comes into play. But you know, Tempus is so customizable, you can pull this information into a pivot grid to be able to get a better idea of, okay, what is that capacity number even? And you know, where are we standing up over time with those numbers when you want to get, you know, deep into those details. And then the last thing I wanted to cover today, specifically thinking, you know, the mind of a resource manager, what is relevant to them. A lot of times, some of the reports that our customers are looking for is more easily found and displayed in a Tempus what if model. The models can be a little scary at first. There's a lot of configuration that goes on there. Again, we have a recording for that. And if you have specific questions, feel free to reach out to me. But when you go into your model list here, when configured and set up, not only do you have, you know, all of your projects here in this Gantt, so you can get a very visual representation of what's going on. And as you know, with the scenario planning, you can move things around. But really what I wanted to focus on is this bottom screen down here. So in this heat map view, when aggregated by that resource attribute, this one happens to be the departments, we are able to see here, you know, looking at that team level, how allocated is everyone? And this is a pretty good representation. Well, as far as it was in 2020, once we get into 2021, everyone's starting to become over allocated. And this model's going out a few years. So this is where we can see where it's kind of tapering off a bit. The nice thing is you can click down in here to view those individual resources. So, you know, Caroline has some availability. She starts to get over allocated, whereas Craig down here is extremely over allocated. What is he over allocated on? We can click that cell to see, okay, you know, his utilization, 28% is going to this project. 16% is going to this one. What happens if we cut this project out in the model? Not changing any of the live data here, really gives you a lot of good information regarding your team. And then additionally, when you go to the grid area of the model, this provides a lot of awesome information. And I'm going to go to hours over here just so, because we've been working in hours in the past. This gives you, okay, accounting and finance is over allocated. Their net availability is negative in 2021, but Caroline has some time. Lauren Stone has 50 hours available. This just gives you this exact same information presented in a different way. Within here, you can say, okay, who on the accounting and finance team is over allocated and they have no availability. You can see just those resources highlighted here. Maybe I want to see only those who have time available. Those are available with the surplus only. Maybe in the allocation, I just want to see a total number of hours. You can do that here as well. And then maybe I just want to see their net capacity. So again, this would be their base capacity minus any calendars or admin time. Maybe I just want to see that information. So you have a ton of options when it comes to the screen. You can overlay the heat map. A lot of good options here that I typically recommend to resource managers, just because it's another way to get a lot of good information. And this can be exported if needed to Excel and PDF as well. And then the one last thing I wanted to focus on too is this resource tab of the model is one of our lesser known areas when it comes to what if model. And again, the recording that we recently did on this, the Tempus What If in Practice, does go into detail here. So feel free to check that out. But this allows you to look at specific resources, and we are looking at all resources right now. You know, and it gives you that waterfall style to dig down in and say, okay, what's going on here? Where are they allocated? What happens if I change this information? What happens if I replace them? So this really gives you, as a resource manager, more control in that what if side of things, where maybe you don't care about project duration or start or end dates, but you're looking to see, okay, what happens when I change this data? That's where this screen could really come into play and be very, very powerful for you. All right, so with that said, we just covered a lot of information, and we didn't go into too much detail on specific items. Like I said, check out the Tempus Help Center. That goes into more detail of the specific items, but today I really just wanted to give you a better idea of, okay, as a resource manager or as someone who is responsible for making sure the resources are utilized appropriately, so not over allocated, under allocated. Maybe you report to your leadership teams who want to be able to see, you know, where are we spending our time and what are we doing? Those are the key areas of the system that I recommend and that we are seeing a lot of success in when it comes to really data storytelling, what's going on and who is doing the work. This is a fantastic way to do it. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me or reach out to your Tempus admin. As always, the Tempus Help Center is available. We have a plethora of Tempus University videos just like this one available there, in addition to our written documentation. And I hope everyone has a fantastic day. I hope to see you on future webinars as well. Thank you, everyone.